of you. Really, this is like the highlight of any week is hanging out with the Bhakti Center. I was just in New York for a Ratha Yatra, so I got to see a bunch of you. Yeah, so let's get into the really important thing today of Srimad Bhagavatam. These are really exciting verses, so I'm really looking forward to discussing them with you. Okay, so let's start. I can share screen. So there are two verses today. 1 second. One of them has a purport, one of them does not have a purport. Okay. Just too many windows open, systems. Okay, so can everyone see the verse? No, this is here. Can everyone see this? Yes, okay, good.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So here we are continuing the reading of the Srimad Bhagavatam, chapter 27, text 10 and 11. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Okay, so let's see. Let's start with text 10. Namastubhyam Bhagavate Purushaya Mahatmane Vasudevaya Krishnaya Sattvatam Pataye Namaha. Translation: Obeisances unto you, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Great Soul, who are all-pervading and who reside in the hearts of all. My obeisances unto you, Krishna, the chief of the Yadu dynasty. And text 11. Swachundapata dehaya vishuddha jnana murtaye sarvasmai sarvabijaya sarvabhutatmane namaha. In translation, unto him who assumes transcendental bodies according to the desires of his devotees, unto him whose form is itself pure consciousness, unto him who is everything, who is the seed of everything, and who is the soul of all creatures, I offer my obeisances. And purport. We could hardly construe from the first line of this verse that God is somehow impersonal, but assumes a personal material body. It is clearly said here that the Lord assumes different forms according to swachanda, according to his own desire, or according to the desires of his devotees. An impersonal God could hardly reciprocate with the personal desires of his devotees, nor could of its devotees. Nor could an impersonal God itself have desires, since desire is a characteristic of personality. Therefore, the Lord's manifesting different forms in a personal way, responding to personal desires, indicates that he is eternally a person and manifests his different transcendental bodies as an expression of his own eternal nature. The word Vishuddha Jnana Murtaye is most significant. Murti means the form of the deity, and it is specifically stated here that the Lord's form is itself completely pure consciousness. Consciousness is the primary spiritual element, distinct from any of the material elements, and even distinct from the subtle or psychological material elements, mundane mind, intelligence, and false ego, which are simply a psychic covering over pure consciousness. Since the Lord's form is made of pure consciousness, it can hardly be understood as a material body, like the mortal bags of flesh and bones we carry around in this world. In the last two lines of this verse, there is a poetic emphasis on the word sarva, everything. The Lord is everything. He is the seed of everything, and he is the soul of every creature. Therefore, let us join with Indra in offering our obeisances to the Lord. Yeah, it seems like Indra's finally can see the light. Namam Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvisesha Sunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hey, dear friends, let's see. How do I stop sharing this? Okay, great. So wonderful verses. There's so much here. I think I mentioned this last time. When there are very short purports, I usually find them there's so much to discuss, so much to explore, so much to see. So let's start with the first verse. Obeisances unto you, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Great Soul, who are all pervading and who reside in the hearts of all. My obeisances unto you, Krishna, the chief of the Yadu dynasty. So I was wondering, what does it mean to offer obeisances? We say that a lot. We use this terminology a lot. But what does it actually mean to have this mood? Because it's a mood. It's not just something that gets done in a, what's the word, perfunctory, someone correct me, I think that's wrong, but it sounds like
perfunctory.
Perfunctory, thank you. I knew you'd come to the rescue. Yeah, so it's not just something that gets performed. If we were to look up the word obeisances, it's the first definition is something that you do physically, that you're offering, say, a bow or something like that, as a show of a mood that's already there, as a show of deference and respect. So it's not the thing in and of itself, it's the mood. And so what does it mean to offer obeisances to anyone, to the Lord? Well, first it implies that there's a person that we're offering obeisances to. It's not just a very impersonal, cold thing that gets done. So the first thing is that it implies that there's a person. And then that it's related to a very specific mood. And so this mood of reverence, of respect, of honor, and of remembering who in this case, we're talking about Krishna. It's about remembering who Krishna is. And so it's an intentional showing of respect, of remembrance of who he is, and it's internal, and then therefore there's an external act that goes with it. So, but the most important thing is that it's an intentional and internal thing that sets off this recognition and honor of the other. And so devotional service can be seen not just as continuing to offer obeisances in just a physical way, but it's to lovingly remember the person, who they are, and to act from that remembrance. And so there seems to be a very practical thing here, because as we're going to see in the purport to the next verse, it talks about a lot about where Krishna is and how his energies are manifesting. And living beings, this consciousness that we're going to talk about in a moment, is everywhere. And so in a very practical sense, we can think about offering respect, offering honor, offering recognition to every living spark of Krishna. And how easy is it for us to do that? How much do we remember to do that? Where is it easy for us to forget? Perhaps when there's a certain kind of people, or people do things differently than we do, or they believe differently than we do, or they behave in a way which we think should be different. And so can we offer that same mood of remembrance of the identity? Not that we'd have to agree with everything that everyone says and does. That's clearly that's not possible. But to remember the substance that they are, who they are and what they are, And in that sense, as an internal mood, an internal feeling to offer that to other people. And it's not just about, we see people in the street. It's actually so much more than that. We're going to get into why this is more. So we're thinking about, what does it mean to offer obeisances? And the first thing is, there's definitely a person on the other side of that. So let's go to the second verse. Unto him who assumes transcendental bodies, according to the desires of his devotees. This is very interesting. Unto him whose form is itself pure consciousness, unto him who is everything, who is the seed of everything, and who is the soul of all creatures, I offer my obeisances. And then the purport begins by saying that, of course, God has to be personal. It's not that he is impersonal and then gets a personal body somehow. And it's a very important distinction to be made, because he doesn't become personal through his body. He himself is personhood. And that personhood, not only does he have his own original body, but he can assume any other body through which he will express his personhood, which is, it's very dynamic. And we can see through all the different ways that Krishna expresses his personhood, as in all these different transcendental bodies and personalities, that it's multifaceted. There's not just one way of being, one personality. If we can think of, if he's the supreme personality of Godhead, and the source from which everything comes from, all the personalities, he's the source of that, then of course it would make sense that he can assume any personality and behave in any way. It's limitless. There will never be an end to the kind of, just like there's never an end to the kind of individual, unique persons that we find in at least what we experience as creation. We'll just take, at least on this planet, you can see even sometimes animals, they have different personalities. You take a bunch of cats or dogs and you examine them for a while, you just hang out with them, you can see they all have different personalities. So there isn't one, there aren't any living beings who have the same exact way of being. And Krishna is the source of all the ways of being. And just like we never run out of unique people, we're going to have people that are similar. We never run out of people who are unique. He never runs out of ways of being or personalities to take on or transcendental bodies to exhibit, because he's never going to run out of pastimes, because everything is perpetual, it's eternal, it's ongoing, it never ends. So again, it's an important distinction. He doesn't, it's like if we take, say, our impersonal aspects, we also have impersonal aspects like a resume or a Facebook page or something like that. It's not that first those things come about and then we look at them and decide, okay, this is my persona. We are a person. We are persons. I am a person. And therefore, I can express myself even in an impersonal aspect. So then I can put up an impersonal, Facebook profile or an impersonal resume or some description of myself where you can kind of know me, but it's not personal. You can know about me. And so the same is with Krishna. The personhood comes first. And and then from there, he expands into different people. Okay, so the next very important thing, this word that's used here, and it is mentioned in the purport also, swachanda. Swachanda is his, and then let's see, how is it translated here? Swachanda. Chanda, according to desire, swa, his own or his devotees, and then upata is at the end of the word. In another place in the Bhagavatam, swachanda is used, and it's translated, I guess because of the context, it's translated as Krishna's own will. So the word upata is not used, but there's another word that's used, like his own will. So because he does whatever he wants, basically, by his own will. And then in this this translation, we're hearing that it's by his devotees' desires. So in one sense, it's his desire, and in another sense, it's the desires of his devotees. And so the purport, I found that really curious. So I was confused. What does it mean? Is it his desires, or is it the devotees' desires? And then it is explained in the purport, according to his own desire or according to the desires of his devotees. From this, we can infer that there is no difference between the desires of the Lord and the desires of his pure devotees. They both impel him, or compel, you could say compel, or they both instigate the response, in which, at least in this context, he's taking on different forms so that he can perform different pastimes, different Leelas. I mean, I think this is a really big deal, because it puts a lot of things into perspective. One, the perspective of how dear are his devotees to him, that their desires are equal to his. That's really close. That's like the bestest friend you've ever had. That is like, parents are often like that. They'll just, your desires are more important to them than their own desires. The other thing that we can think about with this is that this is why it's so, this coming closer and having a very personal and intimate relationship with Krishna is not a cheap thing, because it inspires him to do things so grand as to take on a transcendental personality, a transcendental form, to perform transcendental pastimes that are going to be existing or reverberating through existence forever and ever and ever. That is the power of the desire of the devotee of the Lord. And therefore, it makes absolute sense of why it is imperative for us to purify our desires. If our desires have that much power, then Krishna consciousness as a practice of purifying not only our bodies, but our desires, everything at the subtle level, it makes sense. We can understand why we're doing what we're doing and why we try to dovetail. The other thing that this is implying is that the idea is not to become desireless. We are not impersonalists. Nowhere, I think my understanding is nowhere in Krishna consciousness does it say, give up all desires. We give up desires for the things that are ultimately temporary, not of a higher taste, right? Because so you can eat junk food and then you can eat like a really good home cooked meal. They just have a different effect on you. So we give up desires to certain things. We give up certain objects of desires, dovetail the desires to something higher. But the idea is never to become desireless. So in this way, we help each other. We can, okay, this is what I'm experiencing. This is where my mind is going. This is what I'm attached to. And we help each other and support each other in presenting those higher taste situations where we can start to get a different taste for things in every aspect of life, from the food that we eat, to the things that we read, to the things that we listen to, what we do with our energy, all of it. But it's not a matter of renouncing things falsely. We dovetail. We don't pretend that we don't feel anything or want anything, desire anything. That can, it could work, but we may kind of go back, the pendulum always swings evenly. So if we go to one extreme, it's highly likely that we'll swing to the other extreme. So I found this just so beautiful and relieving and inspiring. This is okay. It gives me this power, this energy to remember why I'm trying to purify my life, my consciousness, my desires, because wow, those desires, when they're in their pure form, are just as good as Krishna's. So the next thing that we're talking about is, let's see, consciousness. Okay, so we talked about being people, the desires of said people, and then what is it? So consciousness is said is the primary spiritual element, distinct from any of the material elements, and even distinct from the subtle or psychological material elements, mundane mind, intelligence, and false ego, which are simply a covering, a psychic covering over pure consciousness. And the Lord is made, his form is made of pure consciousness. This is really interesting. Consciousness is the primary spiritual element. A very long time ago in Greek philosophy, of course, there were philosophers that they all had different ideas, but some of them believed that the primary elements were earth, air, fire, and water. So they didn't recognize ether as an element. They actually, I think there were some that understood what was unseen. They would call that matter, because it was the underlying metaphysical substance that was underneath everything. They referred to that as matter. But then the word changed, and these concepts changed, these ideas changed. So these were the primary material elements. But what this is saying here is that consciousness is the primary spiritual element. So what would happen? And so material still includes the subtle, so the mind, intelligence, and ego. What would happen if we took any one of us, took your physical body away, and even took your subtle body away? What would happen? What would we be left with? What is left behind? If we're not, we say this all the time, that we're not a body. So then what are we? If I don't have, if even my mind that is helping me discuss Srimad Bhagavatam, or the part of us that says, okay, I'm going to read, that intelligence, I'm going to read about the Bhagavatam, I'm going to try to inquire into all of these things, even those things that I think are so valuable, and the things that I'm so worried about purifying, what happens if they're not there? Then what am I? And so we're pure consciousness. Krishna is pure consciousness. But what does that mean? No one really knows what that means. Even all of the, this mind-body debate has been going on for thousands of years. No one can figure it out. What is the interface? You have this body, and then you have this consciousness, and no one knows how they work together. No one knows how they're put together. No one can figure it out. Our philosophy has ideas about it. We know that it's consciousness pervades everything. It's said right here, consciousness pervades everything. But as far as, say, science, there aren't any, everyone has theories, but there aren't any answers for sure where they've said, okay, we figured it out. Look, it's empiric. There's evidence, there's empirical evidence for what consciousness is and how it interacts with matter. There isn't such thing. And I don't think anyone's ever going to be able to put consciousness under a microscope. You can't put Krishna under a microscope. You can't put an Atma, a jiva, a living being, under a microscope. Not in that sense. We can take other things and put them under microscopes, but you're not going to be able to capture that thing. But it's still there. We can understand the effects of consciousness, and we can learn to recognize what is consciousness. But this is going even further than that, because Krishna is in every single thing, and it's explained that he's in every atom, in the smallest indivisible building block of everything that we see and experience, and even in the spaces between the atoms. And so we see things as matter, we see things as dead matter, right? That's a phrase that gets used. But if Krishna and Krishna's consciousness, there's no difference. Krishna is consciousness. He's that what did we say? Spiritual, primary spiritual element, PSE. Primary spiritual element, and he's everywhere. Is there really such a thing as dead matter? Because his consciousness is alive and his consciousness is pervading every single thing. So can we really say things are dead? No, we just can't see the consciousness in it. And so this is the difference between Krishna and us. So he's the primary spiritual element, and that's consciousness. And we're a spark of that same primary spiritual element of consciousness. But the difference is he's never subject to being unconscious. We become unconscious. We're still that primary element of consciousness, but there's something that happens that we can become unconscious. This is why he's called Achyuta. He's infallible. He'll never be unconscious. He'll never forget who he is. And he's everywhere. It's in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, in 7:14, he says, the divine energy of mine, that consists of the gunas, the three modes of material nature, is difficult to overcome. He says, this divine energy of mine, I think the word is, it's used as daiva, maybe is the first, we'll look it up. My divine energy. So even Maya, even what we consider matter, or we refer to it as the material world versus the spiritual world. There really is no difference because it's all Krishna's, right? It's all resting on him. Like he says, it's all resting on me like pearls on a thread. There's no question of there not being a thread. It just is, because otherwise there's no string of pearls. So pervading everything, present everywhere, in everything. And it says in the hearts of others. And so then we go back to personhood. So how do we live this out on a day-to-day basis and from moment to moment? Because what does it mean to be impersonal? To be impersonal means to reduce people to concepts or ideas, to take them away from personhood and reduce them to something else. So in a practical matter, in a practical example, that can look like categorizing people, labeling people. You know, we like things like Enneagrams and Myers-Briggs, these personality tests. They're fun. They, you know, a lot of people like those things. It gives you some insight into how you are, how other people are. So we learn to communicate better and navigate each other and just try to have harmony and understand and hear each other. But when we start to reduce people to just a personality type or just an Enneagram number or just a religion or, you know, atheist this and personalist that, when we reduce people from the person to just a concept, that's being impersonal. So we don't want to reduce people to concepts, to labels, to ideas. We want to do the opposite of that. We want to boost things and people to the level of what they really are, of primary spiritual element. So instead of reducing, we're boosting. And we can see everything, even the things we think have no personhood behind them. If we look deeper, if we remember, then we can remember, yeah, Krishna's as this primary spiritual element is in everything, is the substrate of everything, including what I consider dead matter. So is it really dead? Is he not looking right back at me with his consciousness from this desk? Maybe is it? I don't know. I'll ask you guys. Is that a bit much to consider that he's everywhere in that sense, his personhood? You know, I think we start to behave differently. You know, even if things aren't speaking to us the way humans or other living entities do, they still are things. You know, you can take you know, you can take your anything that's special to you, your yoga mat or something, and you can launch it across the room. But this is a thing that is made up of something that you're using, that you have a relationship with. Why not treat it nicely? You know, this is why we don't, slam doors. You know, the door doesn't feel, it doesn't have a nervous system like we do, but it's a thing, it's a relationship. And so personhood, it can't be experienced. The only way it can be experienced is in relationship. We can't experience it any other way. Consciousness, this consciousness, personhood, I'm using them the same. Consciousness is relational. We can only experience it through relationship, and this indicates that consciousness is personal. And if it's personal, it has a person. So sure, it's okay. We understand that there is an impersonal aspect to the Supreme Lord. And it's said in the Bhagavatam, there is no difference. And also there's a purport in the Srimad, in the Bhagavad Gita, where it's stated very clearly, there is no difference between any of these aspects. And if you see them all as the same, you're seeing well, you're seeing correctly. But we just know the order to put them in and what comes from what. The impersonal comes from the personal, not the other way around, which is where this purport started. So yeah, let's hear. I want to hear from you guys.
Hare Krishna. Can you hear me?
Hare Krishna. Yes. Hare Krishna.
Right. Well, the subject matter of the verse is about obeisances, and you brought it to the level of relationship and personhood, and how like the there's a spectrum, there's a progression, and the Bhagavatam deals with these different levels of relationship. On one level, there's selfishness, like being autistic and being dull and just egocentric. And then at the other end of the spectrum, where the Bhagavatam brings us, is love. You know, that the best, foremost quality of enjoyment in relationship is to have love. So in the beginning, at least we acknowledge the existence of another person by respect and obeisances, but it doesn't stop there. And that's not the highest level. It goes from being a thing to being connected and relating to a person. But then, am I exploiting this person? Am I ignoring this person? Am I appreciating this person? Am I trying to please this person? And our relationship with Krishna is like that too. We may begin, like it says, fear of the Lord. Fear of the Lord is the beginning of understanding, but that's not the end. And we don't go in that direction to the ultimate level of pure love, then life is kind of dull and dry and impersonal. So Prabhupada is showing us that this world that we live in is contaminated, the whole Western world, very impersonal, vending machines and, separating us from our true quality of relationship, because underneath everything, we are loving beings. That's our nature, to love and be loved. And without that, what's life all about anyway? It's just like you look at a bunch of ants in an anthill. They're running back and forth, doing this, doing that. But is there love there? Or is it just some kind of like cooperative effort to survive, eating and sleeping? So this beautiful aspect of bringing in the concept of love and the potential to love and be loved is where the Bhagavatam goes. And I think it's interesting to mention that. Or it is interesting. Prema Punmata Mahan. Not that I think it, but it's Lord Chaitanya says, love of God only. That's what we're looking for. That's what people need. More essential than breath. So anyway, just a comment. You were dancing around that. You got into that end of the conversation, but bringing it home to the point of love of God and in that context, Rupa Goswami says if we did reawaken our natural love of God, then our genuine affection for everyone else is there. So we love you. And we
Yeah.
see your loving heart. I won't talk too much more. Sorry.
No, this is great, Jai. Thank you so much. That is, yes, because it's not enough to, we can see Krishna everywhere. Like I can see Krishna in this desk as his energies, but I can't have a relationship with it. It's not going to fulfill me the way going, being with a friend and having loving interactions. It's not the same. So it's we need all of it. We need to see it. Yes, and ultimately having this loving
Don't settle for
relationship.
less.
Don't settle for less. That's it.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate that very much.
Well, glory to Prabhupada.
Jai. Ananda
Give
Manjari.
your yoga mat a name.
Everything is personhood. And that, I think that's the important thing, because something that was just mentioned about, when we're on the other extreme of being selfish and self-centered and kind of in our own world, and it's me. And this is part of the practicality of these steps of recognizing him everywhere, recognizing that he's here, that he's there, that he's in this heart, in that heart. And that's really the first step. Then we start building upon that loving relationship until we remember, oh yeah, this is the only thing that I want and need, right? Purifying those desires. Chai.
Ananda Manjari, finally.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much for this wonderful class, Lila, Devi, Dasi. I wanted to just add to what you shared, and it reminds me of actually what I heard from Urmila Prabhu some time ago, and it was also speaking about this point and how that the matter is perhaps dead to us, but because there is consciousness of the Lord in it, it also means that how we use our resources and our tools can be also directly a vehicle for relationship with the Lord. And so it's like we actually have a chance to step into this relationship and use the tools with our consciousness towards service and with affection that actually furthers us in spiritual advancement. And this way also the Lord can feel and accept it, and how we care for whatever we have also materially available to us. And it also reminds me of Srila Prabhupada, who would even when the movement was progressing well financially, it's like he would be really protecting every single penny in the movement to make sure that it's actually used well in Krishna's service and nothing is wasted. And he would write instructions or notes or letters on like the backs of envelopes that he received other letters in. And actually it also reminded me of I started this little practice like years back right now, that's when I was learning how in the spiritual world everything is conscious, which always blows my mind to imagine that a blade of grass has consciousness and a cup is conscious and all these things. And when I started doing puja at home, I would always just thank whatever tools I use that for, and just realizing these actually are conscious in the spiritual world, and this little altar is no longer material, it's actually also spiritualized too. And so then to just invite that forth and truly realize that all the things that we have access to, we also have access to relationships with them in that way. So thank you so much for bringing this point. I find a lot of sweetness there too, and there is even a sense of closeness with the Lord, because it also brings us deeper into a more and more subtle aspects of relationships and truly cultivating vision when we are never ever separate. Because if we really see everything as remembering that everything has the consciousness in it of the Lord, it also really means that through connection with every single even object we come across, we are having opportunity to show our devotion and our connection with the Lord too.
Wow, thank you very much, Ananda Manjari. Beautifully said. Thank you. Yeah, that's great. I really like that. I appreciate it. Okay, Jeffrey.
Unmute, Jeffrey.
Hare Krishna, Lila. Thank you
Hare
for this
Krishna,
class.
Jeffrey.
I was thinking while you were speaking, and then Ananda even drove the Ananda Manjari drove the point home in my mind, is this idea of virtue versus devotion. In like Aristotelian virtue, you could have a chair in your mind. It could be the perfect chair. It embodies everything that's a chair should embody. But without the actualization of that chair, you don't have anywhere to sit. So when these spirit souls or chairs come into material existence, we've gone beyond virtue, and so now we don't have perfection of actualized reality, but we have actualized reality, and that is done with love by the Lord. And so the reciprocal relationship has started when existence begins, right? And so then it's, what are we going to do with it? And how do we supersede virtue and get to devotion so that we understand that we're the other half of that relationship? And it was a very interesting point that you made this morning, and I'm going to take it with me today. Thank you.
Wow, Jeffrey, thank you so much. That's really profound. Yeah. I was thinking, I just want to share this about what Ananda Manjari said, because, we hear that the only difference between this world where we are right now, the material world, and the spiritual world, is not a matter of location or, coordinates. It's just the consciousness. So what she was explaining about her altar and everything now is consciousness. That's it, that's being in the spiritual world, connecting with everything in that way and offering it. It's just so beautiful. Yeah, and thank you for sharing what you said too. It's just yeah, that phrase was really, I hadn't heard that before, so I really appreciated it.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Jeffrey Eckler is a chair in the spiritual world.
Well, I just want to share this because this is the foundation of the solution to the problems that we see in the world, or the perpetuating of certain problems, how we treat the environment and what we do with things. What you guys are all bringing up about what do we do with these things and how to use it in the best way with the highest consciousness. And if the world had these ideas, everything would be different. We can see in ourselves how we've changed. We're talking about how we treat chairs and yoga mats, and what to speak of plants, animals, the water. Wow, this is the implications for this are really life altering. Yeah, so you guys are deep. I love you guys so much. Paula Andrea.
Hi, Krishna, my dear sister. Just real quick, because I know the conch is probably going to blow, but first off, I'm blown away by how much deep thinking is done, not just by you, but all the other members of our little, Srimad Bhagavatam group. I put an emoji in the chat. My mind is blown by this class and just by everybody's contributions, and in a really good way. And I just want to bring it back to what you said about obeisances and how they should be an external manifestation of an inner mood. I think that's really powerful because, I'll write emails to devotees and write please accept my humble obeisances. And it just becomes very ritualistic, but are we actually in that mood? And when we meet someone, are we actually in that mood when we're offering our obeisances? And so I think that's what a big takeaway for me, because the other stuff is blowing my mind and I really have to wait with it and digest it because it's way beyond my mental capacity. But that simple thing I can get of wait, when I say to someone, please accept my humble obeisances. Am I actually thinking that in that personal interaction way? And do I have that inner mood? And when I go to the temple, am I in that mood? And when I greet someone, am I in that mood? So thank you for that practical, slight mind blowing and the other bigger mind blowing. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much. Jeffrey wrote 100% agree. 8 a.m. and my noodle is cooked.
Man, I only wish I'm gonna go back to here. I want to hear, because what Jeffrey said too, all of you guys, I'm just like, wait, say that again, please. So I'm definitely gonna go back to listen to you guys. Yeah, this is it's certainly a paradigm shift to see Krishna everywhere, and then it's, in people. It's so hard. I mean, we can walk by each other and not even recognize, who we are, what's going on, or just assume, right? Again, reducing people to just, oh, strangers walking down the street, or there are people there. That reductionism is it's what we don't want to do. Jai.
Thank you, Lila. Beautiful class. Thanks everyone for participating and make the class even more beautiful. Now is the time for darshan. Turn on your cameras if you can.
Radha Mulidhar ki jai. Gaura Chandra ki jai.
Koti Kamaniya Vishesha Soham Govindam Purusham Amaham Ami Govindam. Adi Purusham Amaham.
All right. Hare Krishna. Lila, it was a wonderful class, mind-blowing noodle cooking class. Thank you very much. So we encourage you to go into the world, and every door you open, every chair you sit on, please offer obeisances first and experience personhood. You don't know who this person is. Maybe it's Jeffrey Eckler. I'm looking at the chairs here, and I'm thinking of Jeffrey Eckler. Okay. I guess
Hare
this is it.
Krishna.
This is it. Hare Krishna. Have a wonderful day. Come again tomorrow. Shrimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Jai.
All of you ki jai. Hare Krishna.